I was contracted for this underwater mission on really short notice. It's not unheard of, but I have to say that it is exceedingly rare. A civilian technician like me, pulled in from a list of cleared independents, usually means one of two things. A system went down and nobody on board could fix it, or something was discovered that required deniability. They flew me to Honolulu under the pretense of a week-long calibration job on sonar hardware. Paperwork said I would be interfacing with an oceanic data buoy system for the International Seabed Authority, standard enough. But once I reached the pier, there was no talk of buoys, just a blacked-out tenderboat and a man with a clipboard who did not introduce himself. We rode in silence for 2 hours before a grey shape emerged from the mist. RV Calyx, a mobile deep-sea research platform I'd only ever read about. The crew was small, a skeleton team, half civilian, half military, though no one said as much. People kept to themselves. The project leader, who was a woman named Dr. Mindheart, briefed me alone in a locked lab compartment. We've been tracking an acoustic anomaly, she told me. Low-frequency signals transmitting from the Kermadec Trench. Regular intervals, patterns, not seismic. I asked if it was biological. She shook her head. We've already ruled that out. They had a live feed from one of their autonomous vehicles, the AUV Lens, currently hovering about 10,000 meters below sea level, not yet at full depth. My job was simple. Troubleshoot and maintain the long-range comms relay linked to the lens. If the signal held, it would be the deepest real-time transmission ever attempted. That night, I lay in my assigned bunk and listened, not to the ocean itself, but to the way silence pressed through the hull. At this depth, it's not the absence of noise, it's weight, a kind of pressure on the eardrums and the lungs. The ship did not rock, it barely shifted actually. The only noise I had to keep me company was just a low, structural hum. The first few shifts were normal. Data streamed in. Salinity, thermal gradients, barometric readings. I was mostly logging, checking waveforms, adjusting gain. But at around 0400 on the third day, Lens picked up the sound. It came in like a tremor. At first I thought it was feedback, like maybe just a mechanical shudder or something like that, but it had structure. It was 4 seconds on, and then 16 off, then again, then a longer pause. It was deeper than anything I'd ever heard transmitted through water. I didn't report it right away. I wasn't sure I had to. The acoustic team was already awake and working by the time I joined them in the lab. They had the sound mapped out on 5 different spectrograms, but none of the data made sense. It's originating deeper than the lens's current depth, someone said. It's coming from beneath the trench floor. I asked what that meant. No one answered. Later that morning, I was allowed to sit in on the planning session. They intended to drop Lens another 800 meters into what the team referred to as Zone 0, which was a region below the known trench basin that appeared on only one of the bathymetric scans, a depression or cavity that was not supposed to be there. No geological precedent, said Dr. Meinhardt. No volcanic explanation, and no tectonic instability. It's just empty space. They theorized it was either a fault misrecorded on satellite topography or a cave-in, but that did not account for the transmission or its regularity. They sent Lens down. The descent took hours. I was rotated back into engineering for routine monitoring. The signal remained strong. I drank coffee and logged voltage. The sound continued in its loop, 4 seconds, 16, then the longer pulse, and then, around 9:30 a.m., it stopped. Total silence. Not static, but actual nothingness. Everyone gathered in the viewing room. The live feed came back blurry, just silt and darkness at first. The spotlights on Lens flickered, then caught on something pale and irregular. A formation is what it looked like at first glance, like a natural ridge. But as the camera adjusted focus, details emerged. Symmetry, angles, carvings maybe. I moved closer to the monitor. Whatever Lens had landed near was not rock. It had right angles, linear edges. I saw repeating marks etched into the surface, rows of straight grooves that were intersecting. The lights flared again and revealed more of the object. A wall, maybe 30 meters across, part of a larger structure, mostly buried in sediment, covered in the same geometric scarring. The room went quiet. "Zoom in," someone whispered. The operator adjusted the feed. Closer now, and clearer. One of the grooves had snapped open. It looked like it had peeled, as if it had once been closed, and now wasn't. From the split, something leaked. A shimmer, perhaps, or some kind of distortion. The water around it seemed bent. Then the sound returned, but different this time. It wasn't pulsing anymore. It was constant. A drone, like a single note stretched out until it almost ceased to register. We lost the camera feed within seconds. Not to darkness or malfunction, it just stopped. The entire interface froze. Diagnostics showed all systems online, but Lance was gone. Off the map, no signal, no telemetry. Dr. Meinhardt ordered a shutdown of the lab. I was escorted out and locked out of the comms terminal. The rest of the day passed without further word. I didn't sleep that night. The walls felt thinner. By the morning, rumors had started. The galley was nearly empty. Some of the crew were seasick, others confined to quarters. I heard talk of pressure sickness, which obviously would not make sense, as we had not been diving. One of the marine biologists had a nosebleed that would not stop. Someone else was pacing the lower deck, muttering things that nobody could make any sense of. I found Dr. Meinhardt outside. She had not slept either. I asked what we had found. "We didn't find anything," she said. "We made contact." "Contact with what?" I asked. Meinhardt did not respond. She was staring out over the water, like she was trying to find something on the surface that was not there. Whatever she meant, it wasn't rhetorical. Later that morning, the internal messaging system went dark. No more logs, no intercrew memos. The satellite uplink was severed. Calyx was now a closed loop. I found a copy technician from the audio-visual team. They were just an intern, barely out of school. She told me she tried to back up the Lance feed the moment the transmission cut out, but the system had overwritten itself, just cleanly and deliberately erased, like a secure wipe. 1 minute it was there, the next nothing. Except, she had taken a screen capture, just one, before everything went dark. She showed me on a portable tablet. The image was low-res, shaky from the camera adjusting, and almost indecipherable. But if you look closely, you could make it out. The edge of the trench wall, and something behind it. A shape, not a statue, not machinery, a silhouette. Too symmetrical to be natural, too wrong to be man-made. My eyes could not focus on it. It bent in the middle, curled around itself, and seemed to disappear at both ends. I could not even tell how far away it was. It was like it was not bound by the normal rules of perspective. She refused to send the photo to me, told me she couldn't because of protocol. That night, one of the engineers jumped overboard. No one saw him go. The motion sensors did not catch it. No alarms triggered. But at dawn, we found his shoes neatly placed by the aft rail. Meinhardt did not hold a briefing. We were instructed to maintain normal duties, but the ship was not normal anymore. People whispered even when they were alone. Lights flickered in hallways. Some rooms became inexplicably cold. Once, I walked past an observation port and saw the glass frosting from the inside. I found one of the hydrophonists crying in the equipment bay, holding her ears and mumbling something to herself. Around midday, the acoustic signal returned, this time not from beneath the trench, but from directly beneath Calyx. A sudden, sharp frequency spike like a flare fired straight through the ocean layers. It sent every sonar alarm into red. One of the military types, whose name I never learned, yanked the comms cable from the main terminal and smashed the housing with a fire axe. It didn't matter. The signal was not coming through our machines anymore. It was coming through the hull. We gathered again in the lab. No feed from Lance, no cameras. Just raw data like pressure readings, Doppler shifts, and magnetic anomalies, all spiking. Something massive was moving below us. Then we saw the water change. The Pacific doesn't shimmer, not like this. The surface around the ship had gone from calm to glossy, a strange mirrored texture rippling in geometries that did not match any known wave patterns. It was like watching oil spread over ice, but in slow motion. Light bent the wrong way off of it. I tried to leave the lab, I was stopped. Orders had come down from the top. No one was to leave Calyx. We were now classified personnel. Around 1800, the power went out. Backup generators kicked in, but half of the cameras remained blind. A new sound came then, one none of us had heard before, not even on the playback systems. It was a voice. That is the best way I can describe it, but it didn't actually say any kind of words. It was more just sounds, just rhythm, a harmonic dissonance that scratched the base of the brain. One of the biologists began to bleed from his eyes. Another locked himself in the cold room and would not come out. I found Meinhardt again, this time in the old server room where they had been storing analog backups. She was watching real footage from the first dive. This was physically stored footage, and impossible for it to have been altered in any way. "I've seen this before," she said. I didn't respond. In 1978, a Soviet bathysphere went missing near the same trench. No record, no wreckage, just gone. A single audio transmission lasted 11 seconds. It matches what we have been recording now, exactly. I looked at the footage, black and white, grainy. It showed the trench from above, and something opening. A massive seam in the seafloor, like a wound pulling apart, and from it, darkness poured. It wasn't an absence of light, but something with mass, like shadow turned solid. And then the film cut out. We didn't sleep that night. By morning, half of the crew had barricaded in the comms room. Others were trying to reboot the transmission uplink, but no signal was going out. I went below decks and found one of the divers losing his mind and just mumbling to himself, clawing and scratching at his own arms like he couldn't control himself. If you could have seen it, then you would have seen true horror. The gouges he had made on himself, it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. The amount of pain it must have caused, but he just kept going. I also don't understand why the sound affected some people, but not others. I don't know why I wasn't affected, why Meinhardt was not affected. It doesn't really make sense to me. No one knew what time it was anymore. The shimmer on the water was expanding. We could see it in every direction. Something was warping the entire surface area. Weather satellites would have caught it, but no one was listening. And then, at 7:42 a.m., the sound stopped. Every system flatlined, instruments, power, even the emergency LEDs. The entire ship plunged into a perfect, depthless silence. And then we saw it. From beneath the mirrored surface, something began to rise. We didn't see it clearly, not all of it, not at once, just shapes, angles, movements that defied structure. A glint of something massive just beneath the waves, like an eye opening beneath glass, and it was looking directly at us. Meinhardt whispered, "Don't move." I couldn't. None of us could. Then it sank again, slowly, quietly, without a ripple. The power returned 4 minutes later. We turned. Half the crew were messed up. Looked like they were in total agony. That was 6 years ago now. Almost to the day, actually. I never went back to the Calyx, and never worked for any of those people again. I was released under medical pretense, but not before I signed enough paperwork to bury me if I spoke a word. I figure enough time has passed. Not like many would believe me anyway. I have no idea what we saw down there, but I have no interest in seeing anything like it ever again. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Night dive in Bali. The water was pretty choppy, and we hung around the sandy bottom for a while before ascending. When I got up, I inflated my BCD and took off my mask so I could float on the surface and look at the sky. Suddenly, my BCD abruptly deflated, and I started rapidly sinking down to the bottom because I was wearing extra weights. Kept pressing the inflate button, and it simply refused to inflate. No mask, regulator out of my mouth, and pitch black darkness. Flailed around a bit from my secondary and managed to swim upwards enough, literally paddled for my life, for my buddy to grab me. Turns out, a bunch of sand got in my BCD when we were underwater and choked it up, so it did not inflate properly. It was horrible. I genuinely thought I was going to be pulled down, and eventually drown before anyone could get to me. Diving the day before a hurricane on a small South Pacific island. Out of nowhere, a black and white sea snake, venomous, wrapped itself around my arm. Apparently, this happens from time to time before major storms. They can sense it and look for things that are heading towards the shore so that they don't have to put in so much effort to get out of the sea. As soon as I was in the shallows, it uncurled and headed up the beach where it hid under a breadfruit tree. I thought I was going to get bitten to death by a snake at sea. Turns out, I was just a taxi for a very calm but rather rushed reptile. Free dove to about 160 feet in Dean's Blue Hole in the Bahamas. It's where a lot of the free diving world records are set. Super neat place. Google a picture. Anyway, I'd never really been past 100 feet free diving, but this was the perfect place to do it. No current. There is ropes to keep you straight and allow a slight pull back up. Scary part is that you become pretty strongly negatively buoyant after like 60 feet, so you are basically hauling ass down while doing nothing and using very little air. So, I'm dazed out a bit, feeling good and counting the lines that mark the depth, and all of a sudden feel pressure, like my trachea is going to collapse, and wake up and realize I've counted to the line that's around 160 feet or so. Very scary moment, because I was not sure if my body could take the depth or if I had gone too far and wouldn't have enough air to get back up, which is a much slower and much more air-intensive process. The Byford Dolphin diving bell incident. On the 5th of November, 1983, at 4 a.m., while drilling in the Frigg gas field in the Norwegian sector of the North Sea, 4 divers were in a decompression chamber system attached by a trunk, a short passage, to a diving bell on the rig, being assisted by 2 dive tenders. One diver was about to close the door between the chamber system and the trunk when the chamber explosively decompressed from a pressure of 9 atmospheres to 1 atmosphere in a fraction of a second. One of the tenders, 32-year-old William Cramond of Great Britain, and all 4 of the divers were killed instantly. The other tender was severely injured. Diver D4 shot out through the small jammed hatch door opening and was ripped apart. Subsequent investigation by forensic pathologists determined that Diver D4, being exposed to the highest pressure gradient, violently exploded due to the rapid and massive expansion of internal gases. All of his thoracic and abdominal organs, and even his thoracic spine, were ejected, as were all of his limbs. Simultaneously, his remains were expelled by force through the narrow trunk opening left by the jammed chamber door, less than 60 centimeters, 24 inches in diameter. Fragments of his body were found scattered about the rig. One part was even found lying on the rig's derrick, 10 meters, 30 feet, directly above the chambers. There is actually a picture of the remains of the body, which is much too gruesome to show on here. Only look it up if you can stomach seeing a human body scattered into pieces. I dive a lot, several times a week. My area has a lot of theoretically dangerous things: sharks and barracudas, morays and stingrays, blue-ringed octopuses, cone snails, box jellies, siphonophores of all kinds, sea snakes, stonefishes, and scorpion fishes, venomous catfish, crown-of-thorns starfish, and various sea urchins that can hurt you in several different ways, titan triggerfish, and so on and so on. But only one thing has ever gotten me, twice. Are you ready? Clownfish, like Nemo. They are territorial and brave, and will get in your face if you knew they're anemones. I usually respect their space, but I was distracted enough watching something else a couple of times, and it turns out that they will actually bite you if you don't leave their space fast enough. For real though, I don't have any particular horror stories, but the scariest moments are probably when I get caught in strong currents and have to crawl on the bottom to fight it, going hand over hand like I'm climbing a horizontal wall. Despite what a lot of people tend to think, especially looking at the daunting list of dangerous animals in my area, sea critters are not your problem. You leave them alone and it is fine. Sea conditions like wave or currents, and above all, human error, are the real killers. I just remembered an incident that actually did scare me. It was a human error / equipment failure issue. When you are diving, you want to ascend to the surface slowly. This is because under pressure, your blood and tissues can hold more gases, in particular inert nitrogen from your compressed air, dissolved in it, than when you're at the surface. And as you ascend to the surface, these dissolved gases have to return to being gases. If you are slow, you just breathe it out as you come up. But if you are too fast, then they turn into bubbles of gas in your arteries and veins before they can be vented out. This causes embolisms as well as decompression sickness, aka the bends. I was diving with a friend at about 25 meters, 82 feet, when her old, beat-up BCD, the vest that you can inflate with air to control your buoyancy, started to inflate all on its own. This has happened to me before as well, but I just disconnected the air hose from the BC immediately and carried on, and went on to do about 10 dives with a busted BCD that I only inflated manually. She did not think to do that, or did not have time to do that. This happened very quickly. I saw that she was having buoyancy control issues. She was upside down, kicking, trying to stay down. But in a few seconds it took for me to realize how bad the problem was. She was already at the surface. Basically, I quickly glanced around to see if there was a rock I could use to weigh her down, and when I turned back, she was gone. I followed her up, but not too quickly. And even so, my dive computer was beeping warnings at me. When we met up, I wondered why she didn't use her dump valve. There is a valve at the bottom of the BCD exactly for releasing air when you are feet up, especially since she was experienced and should know to do that. Then I saw that the string you pull to open up the valves was missing, so it was literally impossible to dump the air when oriented that way. So check your gear before you use it. I was pretty worried she would come down with the bends, but she was thankfully fine. People are often worried that I dive alone a lot, but honestly, all of my scariest and most anxious moments were problems occurring with other people. This story is well known among my circles, and it will be easy to identify me, so I am going to try to use as little personal details as possible. I grew up in Oz. When I was 15, I took the family boat out and dove the reef myself to clear my head. Mistake number 1. I was down at a depth of about 28 meters, 90 feet, when I was only rated for 60 feet. Mistake number 2. Whilst diving, I spotted a 3.5 meter Mako shark coming right at me. For those who are unaware, Makos are basically the cheetahs of the ocean, and they only have 2 speeds: curious, harmless, and lunge, very much harmful. This guy was in lunge mode. So I hovered, as I had been trained to do, as there would be no way for me to outmaneuver it or escape it. Nowadays, we dive with shark shields, which emit electronic pulses that freak the sharks out and keep them away. But back then, what we used was essentially a chainmail sleeve. The idea being that sharks hate the taste of metal, so if you give it your arm, it will bite down, decide you are gross, and move along. So I wait, and it comes, and I do a perfect move to give the beastie my arm. Just before the crunch, however, it occurred to me that I had left my sleeve on my bed. Mistake number 3. I had my kelp knife drawn and stabbed it right as it bit me. It swam off, and I was alive. However, now I had a series of problems. 1. I had a huge, open gashing wound on my arm from the bite in open water, and blood was trailing everywhere. 2. Once the shock wore off, you realize that you were in salt water, and salt and open wounds do not feel good. Number 3. In a panic, I dropped my weight belt and shot up to the surface without any sort of waiting period. Hello, bends. Mistake number 4. Number 4. Because I had not been paying attention to the currents, I was approximately a quarter mile downstream of my boat, which means I had to swim up to it. Mistake number 5. Number 5. When I got to the boat, I really started to wish I had done as my DA had said and had the comms fixed. Mistake number 6. Or that I had upgraded the first aid kit, like I had been threatening to do. Mistake number 7. So, I end up racing back to shore with nothing more than a tourniquet to staunch the bleeding. Long story short, my series of unfortunate self-inflicted events earned me 172 stitches, boatloads of physical therapy because the shark had actually bitten down on my tricep and attached it, and easily identifiable scars on one of my arms for the rest of my life. Oh, and I lost my deceased grandfather's favorite kelp knife that he had left to me. TLDR, I fell asleep while diving. The weather had been pretty hot, and the water temperature was also around 26 degrees Celsius. We'd done a dive and a long swim in the morning. We then headed out for our second dive, and the boat dropped us in the wrong spot, so we had to swim against a massive current to get to our intended site. Halfway into the swim, I just felt like I needed a nap. And so, I closed my eyes and did exactly that. It felt so peaceful. I immediately dropped down to an even deeper depth, and was lucky that one of the guys on the dive turned around at that moment and saw what was happening. He swam as fast as he could towards me and caught me. He asked if I was okay. I said I was and passed out again, this time spitting my reg out and started blowing bubbles. He then went behind me, shoved my reg back in, wrapped his arms around me, and took me straight to the surface. He saved my life. In the summer, I teach at a dive school in the Dutch Caribbean. On the island I work at, there are special zones that boats are never allowed in, even though they are at open sea, just because there are so many divers in the water at the time. Me and another instructor were teaching a family of 5 to dive, so this was the first course. We did our first 2 lessons in the pool to get the basics down and just get familiar with all of the gear, and the family was all good, real easy going, and quickly picking up on stuff. So, for our first open water dive, we go to one of the spot boats that are not allowed in. It's not too deep, good view and nice coral structure as well. We do some exercises on the seafloor, about 10 meters, 30 feet, deep in a sandy bed with nothing close by the students could destroy by accident. This is just to get everyone familiar with the salt and the elements. Some struggles, but all good in the end. We all have enough air left and decide to go on a little dive deeper, the coral in. I saw a kid, about 14, having a bit of trouble and getting uneasy, also showing some signs that they were going to panic, so I stay extra close to them. My fellow instructor was up front leading the group, and I was in the back with the kid, and all of the other students buddied up. We do hear some boats and stuff, but you hear that often. They are not in the area, just driving by, until this one rental boat comes in the area, and right at this time, the kid starts to get more panicked. So I try to calm them down, which does not work, and the kid tries to go up quite fast, still at about 10 meters, not good but not dramatic, so I grab on and do the procedure to try and stop him. Enter the rental boat, zooming right toward us. Fellow instructor is trying to get their attention by pulsing his secondary air to no avail. At this time, the kid is panicking even more, and at some point, I do have to let go because of my own safety. Please understand that I have been trying to calm them down for about a minute at this point. So the kid bolts up, and the boat did hit them, just barely missing the propeller. I really was just waiting to see the blood, but luckily, nothing. I also bolt up, was at about 5 meters, 15 feet, and check up on the kid, somehow totally unarmed, not a visual scratch on him. So I turn around to the boat, which luckily did stop, and all the adrenaline just lets go, and I swear this guy into oblivion. Professional? No. Was it a release for me at that point? Yes. We of course end our dive right away and go back to the shore. I offered to taxi the kid back to the shore so they don't have to swim, but they wanted to swim and said they were fine. Although this is a good sign, I of course stay right on them. We get to the shore, explain what happened, and the kid goes to hospital. Minor memory loss, but nothing else. So the kid takes a couple days break and then finishes the course like a champ. What about the rental boat idiots? We have the Dutch military police dive at our shop, not just like officers, but also the detectives and stuff. So we tell them, and go to the rental place right away. Only 1 or 2 on the island. Finds the captain of the boat, and gives them a couple of strong words of advice, but also, the shop owner gets some strong words. Parents did not want to press charges, so it stays at that. This one is not that spooky, but I remember it vividly scaring me shitless for a very, very long time. Be me, 7 to 8 years old at the time, at Pyramid Lake on a family road trip. At beach, family of Mexicans have a jet ski. Get to take a ride on it. It was actually really fun. Younger girl gets on it next. Shaky at first, but her family cheers her on. She turns behind a rock. Maybe 5 minutes pass after her disappearance, and the family becomes visibly worried. They call the cops. Me and my mom leave for the hotel room. Come back later, at nighttime. Everything is calm, but hellishly quiet. Suddenly, I hear a loud roar coming from the sky. It's a plane with searchlights, no biggie. See star next to it move. More stars join in. Freaking out. They begin to make patterns and shapes. flip shit, and lock myself in the car. My mom says that when she asked me to open the doors to the car, I replied with something along the lines of, "I'm not going back up there." Never really forgot about it. It never really left my memory. I hope that Mexican family is doing well.